Welcome to another edition of Tampa Bay Insiders, where we take a look at the movers and shakers in town. Today, we're very fortunate to have with us our County Commissioner from District 3, Les Miller. Thank you so much for being here,
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Les, of course, is also former senator, former state legislator for how many years altogether?
14.
14 years.
14
so
years.
We're really delighted that you are now our county commissioner, can bring all that experience with
Thank
you. For purposes of this program, we are trying to find out more about you. So are you a Tampa native?
Born and raised.
You are?
Born and raised in Ybor City.
Oh, you're an Ybor guy, too.
I remember when there was no interstates.
Oh, where nothing was coming over your head,
Nothing
you mean?
was coming over
and
my
the
head.
McDonald's was there yet?
Tampa was a sleepy little town.
A little town.
Yeah.
And you went to school locally?
Was at public schools, graduated from Middleton High School, the old Middleton High School, back in 1969 when most schools were still segregated. There was only two schools that African Americans could attend in Hillsborough County. That was Middleton on the east side and Blake on the west side. And I went to Middleton and graduated from Middleton High School.
And then?
Went to Bethune-Cookman College for 1 year. I was went there on a music scholarship. I was a vocal. Yeah, I could sing a little bit.
No kidding.
And,
Do you still do that?
In the shower.
In the shower. He sings in the shower. Okay, folks. Little known fact. Les Miller sings in the shower.
And
okay.
I went there, and but my second year, my sophomore year, the school ran out of money. It was a private school, Methodist school,
right.
And they had to cut scholarships. And my father retired by that time. My father worked in a phosphate plant for 44 years.
Here in Tampa,
Here in
down
Tampa.
at the port?
Yeah, down in the Gibsonton area. Mm-hmm. He'd retired, and my mom was not doing well health-wise. So I had to leave and come back to Tampa and enroll at the University of South Florida. But Vietnam was real hot, and my lottery number was 4.
Oh my God, how unlucky is that?
The first year we were able to have lottery numbers, I was eligible, my number was 8. So I figured I would go up some way. So the year I was eligible for it, my lottery number was 4, went from 8 to 4. So I knew I was going to get drafted, and so I volunteered.
But didn't you get a student deferment or anything?
No, because I didn't have the hours to match the years I was in school because I transferred. And
okay.
South Florida would not take a private school's hours at that particular point in time. So I lost the hours, I had to start all over again. And I didn't have a deferment. So I knew I was going to get drafted. So I went in the Air Force and enlisted in the Air Force and stayed in the Air Force 4 years.
Did you go to Vietnam?
No, I had orders to go to Vietnam. But I had a first sergeant that realized I was the only surviving son. And that was number 1. And number 2, I won it in 1970. And in February 1968, my sister's husband was killed in Vietnam. After being there 22 days. So they basically said, we're not going to send you to Vietnam. So I tried to come to MacDill, and they said, no, we're not going to send you to MacDill. So they left me at Chanute Air Force Base my entire tour of duty.
Oh my.
So I stayed there. Florida boy in 88 miles south of Chicago. That's where I stayed my entire duty.
And then when you came back, did you go back to USF?
I came back to USF. I thought about going to other places, but my father was developing Parkinson's disease. And my mother, of course, had a brain tumor surgery in 1971, I think it's what I was the new one. And my sister was the only one here. It was only 2 of us. So I thought it was best that I come home. So I came back and was enrolled at the University of South Florida. They accepted me on conditions that I proved myself. So I came back, and I obviously proved myself. And that's when I enrolled at USF.
What was your major?
Political science.
Did you think you were going to go into politics,
well,
or were you just interested in the topic but never thought about it?
When I first went to college, I majored in voice because I thought I would be a singer. But I realized that I was going to starve to death if I did that. I always wanted to be a lawyer, but I realized after I came back and I was married that I wasn't going to go to law school. But my father got me involved in politics because he was a union guy. And he was heavily involved in the union, and as much as a black man can get involved in politics in the early to mid-50s, he was involved. And he would take me along with him and putting up yard signs and talking to other people about who they should vote for and that kind of thing, and it just caught my interest. So I started in elementary school and junior high school and being involved in student government, and high school being involved in student government, and I realized that the only way I was going to give back to people, because I would ever be rich, was the time I could serve as an elected official maybe and try to make a difference in their lives that way.
What prompted you to, when you did enter, your first race was for state legislature, right?
I was student government president at the University of South Florida.
Okay, did you win that?
I won that. That was back in 1977 when we only had 800 African American students on campus, and someone dared me to run because I made a statement of what I would do.
800 students out of what were there?
18,000.
Wow.
And I did, so I ran, and I won. And really, that was my first introduction to real public office because you had to deal with a student senate. You had a budget at that time of $2.5 million that the student government was responsible for.
Really?
And
That much?
ANS fees. And now it's like 15, 16 million that they're in charge of. So that was my first run.
Wow.
Then after that, I went to work in the private sector for a while. My first run again was for state legislature was 1982. I ran for the House of Representatives, and I lost. Came in dead last.
What were you doing in the private sector?
I worked for utility for about 9.5 years. I worked for utility.
Okay.
And then when I left that utility, I went to work for a not-for-profit as a vice president of a not-for-profit for a while.
What did they do, the not-for-profit?
It was the Urban League. They helped
right.
with jobs, they helped train people, education, a whole gamut of things. But the Reagan administration came along and said, enough of all these not-for-profits getting money. So he started cutting. And when he started cutting, urban leagues across the country was hurt. And at that time, the Urban League had a massive number of programs. We were doing a lot of work.
Oh, you were helping kids stay off the streets and get jobs. I remember.
They cut the funding, and I was over programming, and so I had to cut many of the major programs. And then when I cut them, I had to cut myself. So I cut myself out of a job. So from there, I basically started my own consulting business and doing feasibility studies and things on those lines. And then I went to work for Time Warner in their office here. When you make the phone calls and you try to register for those you're a millionaire, all that's done right here in Tampa. People don't realize that.
Oh, Time Warner, the magazine.
The magazine company.
All right, right.
And then I ran I'd run for the state, for the city council in 1988, and I lost that too. And then in 1991.
You're going to be one of those lessons that I love in don't let a loss get you down.
Me and Abraham
Keep
Lincoln.
on going.
Me and Abe Lincoln, right.
Yeah, keep on going. Don't just keep on trucking.
So in 1991, there was a special election held for the city council, and I ran and I won. But 56 days later, I had to step down because the person that was there, he was indicted, and he wasn't guilty. He really wasn't, and they found him not guilty. So the governor reappointed him back to his position. I had to step down.
But you'd been elected, or you were appointed?
No, I was elected. I was elected. I had to run because he had just got elected that year, and they indicted him a couple of months later. So he had well over 3 years left. So the law stated you had to have an election at that particular point in time. So I had to run.
Oh, because he wasn't in the amount of time that would trigger an appointment.
Yeah. So I ran, and I won. But 56 days later, I had to step down. So I stepped down. And so I figured at that time, my time of running for office was over. And in 1992, the legislature was going through reapportionment, and they'd been in session forever. They finally ended up drawing the lines, and then Jim Hoggart, who was the House member at that time, who I lost to, and 10 years earlier, called me and said, hey, maybe you want to run for the House of Representatives. And so I went home and talked to my wife, and she said, why not? And we did. And
was she already on city council?
no, she wasn't.
No,
She was still in the school system at that time. And I ran in 92 and I won.
What was your impetus for running, besides getting a phone call from Jim Hoggart? What did you want to do when you were thinking about doing this? Like, I had to go run.
Trying to make a difference, trying to better lives of people in the state. My dad worked in a phosphate plant for 44 years. He was 49 years old when I was born. Okay.
Wow.
So he went to high school. He got his high school diploma, but he went to high school when black men, black boys went to school 6 months out the year and worked on the railroad laying cross tires. And I don't know if you know what a cross tire is. That's that wood that's on the railroad track. Yeah. Did that 6 months out the year. And my mother only went to the 8th grade. She had to move to Tampa when her mother and father passed away and live with her aunt. So she had to help take care of the family, so she had to drop out. So they always taught me and my sister, that if you see something that you think needs to be changed, don't wait to see anyone else to change it. Try to change it yourself.
What were you seeing at that time?
Well, it was a lot happening in the state that I thought that needed some changing. I thought the education system was being neglected, still is. I thought that there was health care issues that needed to be taken care of, still is. I just thought that there were many changes out there that maybe I could make a difference in doing. So that's the reason I ran. And I ended up winning and had to go to work to try to make those things happen in the legislature.
You were saying we were still under the DSEG order, weren't we, here, and even
When I was in high school?
Or when you ran?
We were.
Because I was on the school board
Yeah.
biracial advisory for many
We were
years.
at that time.
Yeah.
We were at that time.
So things weren't yet where we needed them to be,
No, they
for
weren't.
sure.
They weren't.
Until.
So there was a lot of work to be done in
Yeah.
Tallahassee. And I went there.
How do you think, I guess parents somehow instill this idea of doing community service in their children, not by saying anything, but by doing it? Is that the whole thing? I mean, your father in the union and all of that, just really participating in trying to better people.
Well, that's what my father and mother instilled in my sister and I.
Yeah.
To do that. I think that my father ever could, at that particular point in time, ever had the opportunity to run for office, he probably would have. But back then, African American.
I wonder what
black
he'd
man.
think about this latest, is that proposed or did it go through here? This, you can't take union dues out of a paycheck.
Well, the House has passed it. The Senate
Yeah.
has not passed it yet. I don't know if the Senate's going to take it up or not.
He'd
We'll have to
probably
wait
be
and see.
jumping up
Oh,
and
he
down,
would.
wouldn't
He would. He would.
Yeah.
He would be jumping up and down about
Well, if
that.
you can take money out for United Way, can't you take money out for this? I mean, I'm not.
It's a person's money. Why should they be dictated to what they should do with it? But he would have really been angered by that.
Right,
Really, no doubt about it.
So now you were in the House of Representatives 10 years? No, sorry.
8 years.
8 years.
8 years.
And then ran for the Senate?
The Senate became open in 2000 because of term limits to the senator there, which was Jim Hargett again.
Yeah.
So I ran for the Senate.
So you never know when your competitor's going to end up helping you get
Yeah,
where
yeah,
you need to go
exactly,
anyway, right?
Exactly. So I had a tough race in 2000. I had a race against the late Doug Jamerson.
Right.
He was in that race, and I won the primary. Doug Jamerson helped me, and then I won the general election with 72% of the vote, and I went to the
That was
Senate.
enormous.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
big time.
Big time.
That is big
Yeah.
time. So you spent 6 years there. So all that time in Tallahassee, you voted on a lot of things, initiated a lot of legislation, I'm
Right.
sure,
Right.
pushed for things,
Right.
helped other people get their stuff through. What are the highlights to you of the things that you did that
Well-
you feel like I did get involved and these are things I know that I did make a difference?
Well, 14 years, you pushed that red or green button many a times. You filed a lot of legislation. I did some things that I think that I was very proud of. That quietly, I passed a bill that was called Healthy People 2010, where it allowed minority-owned doctors to create their own healthcare companies and go into areas where there was not much that a person could have, especially in our rural areas. They could get healthcare from like their HMOs, and it allowed them to do that. I was fought by HMOs, big companies on
Why
that issue.
wouldn't they have been allowed to do that?
Because there was so much regulation in where they could go and where they could not go, and
Who was dictating that?
the state.
State said, okay,
Well, the
in
state-
order for you to go into this county or this town,
You had to have certain things approved by the Department of Health to go in there, and there was legislation that had to be filed. So I did that. It helped rural areas, whether they were black, white, or green, or different, get health care, and now they get those things. That was something I was proud of. I'm a 3-time cancer survivor, so that meant a lot to me to get something like that done. I fought hard for education, especially Hillsborough County. I was a product of Hillsborough County Public Schools, and they weren't getting funded properly. So at that time, being in the minority, because the Republicans had taken on when I was a Democrat, in the Senate, I still had an opportunity because the working together, the congeniality of the Senate, regardless of what party you're in, went to the President of the Senate and said, something has to happen. You had counties that weren't growing, the population was stalemated, compared to Hillsborough County at that time, student population was growing, but we weren't getting the funding we should have because of something called the DCD, the District Cost Differential. And we had to fight to get that changed, and I helped write that law to get that change where Hillsborough County at that time was being a fast-growing student population county. We got the monies that we needed within this county. I had to fight a lot with Governor Jeb Bush. I was a minority leader twice, once in the House and once in the Senate. I filed bills to get teachers increases in pay. That didn't pass, but it was an eye-opening experience because it was a piece of legislation that was a real line drawn in the sand of who was going to support it and who was not going to support it. So we fought a lot to getting things passed, and those are some of the things I did. I fought on education, healthcare.
I guess you'd be up there now yelling about this latest bill with the teacher tenure.
Yeah, I would, because I think that is, teachers are our number one, to me, molding the minds of our number one natural resource, and that's our children. And they're not paid well anyway. They should be the highest paid people in this county and in this state, in this country, not the lowest, because they're training our students. It's all about, well, we're going to weed out the bad teachers. They weed out the bad teachers. I talked to the superintendent of schools here in Hillsborough County, and usually on an average year, 7% of the teachers don't get rehired to come back because they weeded out. The principals know who's not doing the job. The principals know who's not there doing what they're supposed to do in educating our children. So why do we have to have a bill to, one, take away tenure, to two, make sure that your pay is upon what happens with the students?
Over whom you have very little control.
Exactly, because you're only with that student a certain number of hours a day. They have to go home. If the parents aren't taking care of what happens in the home, you can't dictate what happens there, and the legislature can't legislate what happens in the home. You can't do that. So I think that was one of the worst things we could have done. And right now, if you're a young person that wants to go into education, why would you want to be a teacher in Florida? Why would you want to know that I'm not going to have a guaranteed job, plus the fact I don't know if I'm going to get paid, plus the fact I might get fired at any moment now because of the mere facts of what this law does. So
I feel like the only way that law should have been passed is if they passed the same law for the legislators themselves and the elected officials and government workers of all kinds. So if the community's not doing well, if people don't have jobs and you have 11% unemployment or 12, then all of you are gone.
Right.
Because we're not doing good. So therefore, you're out. So because to me, it's the same difference. Because you would turn around and probably say, but I have no control over whether or not you went and got a trade or you didn't, or you were inspired and so forth, or studied at home or did whatever. But that's the craziest thing I've heard in a long time.
It wasn't a good piece of legislation, but it's now law. Our governor signed it into law last week, and it's unfortunate.
And we're going to deal with it now. Now we have to deal with it.
Right.
Other legislation that you'd like to mention that you really were, some close to your heart?
Well, I mean, a couple of things that was close to my heart was there was a law, there wasn't a law, but an incident that happened here in Hillsborough County where a young lady was coerced, trying to be coerced to get in a car with a guy and was enticed to do that. Unfortunate part about it, she ran and she went home and told her parents. She got a good description of the guy, and the police caught him. But because this was his first time, there was no law that said he would have to be locked up.
Wow.
I changed that. I passed a law that said if you try to lure a child into a dwelling or a car, whatever the case may be, it was, I think we ended up with a third-degree felony because it just didn't make any sense to me.
No.
Not whatsoever. So you try that now, you go to jail. Another thing that I worked on and I'm proud of is that many neighborhoods across the state have neighborhood watches or civic associations, specific neighborhood watches. And in certain parts of the state, when some of these bad guys threaten some of the neighborhood watch people when they're trying to protect their neighborhoods. And I passed a law that said if you threaten someone of a neighborhood watch, you will go to jail. And the day that was passed, right here in Hillsborough County, a gentleman in Nebraska threatened one of the neighborhood watch people. He went to jail, and they sentenced him to 364 days in jail.
Wow.
Those are some of the things I worked on in the past.
Now you've come back to the more local neighborhood area, the county commission, and you're, in fact, my district representative,
Good.
District 3, which you might want to describe to the viewers is where it's located?
It's hard to describe because of the lines, the way the laws are drawn. But if you want to picture a box, the northern boundary of Hillsborough County would be Bears. It would then go over to I-75, that being really the eastern boundary. It goes that all the way down south to Riverview, Riverview Road. That's the southernmost boundary. It then comes along Tampa Bay, takes in part of downtown Tampa. The boundary to the west would be Armenia, except it goes over to Carver City and Lincoln Garden, then back to Armenia, all the way up to Bears again. Takes in a lot of the inner city of Tampa.
A lot of different neighborhoods. Seminole Heights, Old Seminole Heights.
Progress Village, Palm River, Claramel, part of the Notasasa, University of South Florida, all that area. North Tampa, part of North Tampa, yeah.
Commissioner, we're in now, some really horrendous times in terms of the economy. I know we're coming back. I see that, the unemployment rate did go down a little bit in the state of Florida and also in Hillsborough County, and that's great news. Where do you see us needing to go in the county? And let me mention, too, that I know my friends are, too. We're all grateful that we have now on our commission 3 people who know the bigger picture. And you all seem to me to be asking much harder questions than people who had not had that experience. So I think we're grateful that you're there because you know so many other areas now that we didn't know before. But anyway, where are we going? What are we going to do?
Concerning the questions, when you're in Tallahassee, you got to look at the big picture. You got to look at a state that's now probably close to 19 million people, so you have to ask the tough questions. And I guess that's a habit that you come back to local government, you ask some of those same questions. Hillsborough County must get economic development in it. We have got to bring jobs to this county. That's a difficult thing to do because the mere fact is that you also got to work with 3 municipalities in this county. And it is my hope and prayer that with the new mayor coming on board and the new city council in the city of Tampa and working with Temple Terrace and Plant City, we can work together to get economic development in this county. There's going to have to be industries brought here. Unfortunately, we lost Jackson Labs. I wish we could have brought Jackson Labs. Yeah. People saying, well, those are high paying level jobs. Well, they are, but guess what? They also bring entry-level jobs with them that pays decent salaries. It might not be an engineer, it might not be a chemist, it might not be a person that mixes the formulas, but someone has to open the doors, someone has to answer the phone, someone's got to clean the place. So those are jobs that we missed out on.
And all those executives, or whoever they are, professionals, need carpenters, plumbers, they're going to buy a house or...
We have got to work together to bring economic development to Hillsborough County. There's no doubt in my mind because everyone's got to pay the rent. They've got to buy their homes. They've got to make the car payments. And the thing about it is this: if you bring jobs, your property taxes increase. Why? Because people buy homes. And so we have more money to divvy up to take care of your station. That's important.
Yeah.
If we bring those jobs here, we can make those things happen. But we're going to have to work together. Governments can't afford not to work together anymore. Just doesn't work that way. You can't say, I'm the county and I'm going to work with the city. Times have changed. The economy has changed across this world. Gwen and I were in Spain last year. They're suffering in Spain. I mean, everywhere you go, the economy is behind. So it's not going to be the same. We can't spend all willy-nilly like we did before. So we're going to have to work together, sit at the table and see, number one, what kind of programs maybe we can work together to save dollars for the taxpayer. But also, what can we do together to bring jobs into Hillsborough County? Let's start talking about bringing those jobs here. That's the most important thing on the agenda.
Are you
right
looking
now.
at any particular industries that, because people throw around things like biomedicine and high tech and this and that. Are there particular industries that we're after?
Biomedicine, high tech are great, but Walmarts, Kmarts, major food chain stores, anything that could come here and bring jobs that we can bring into this county, we would love to have. We would love to have. Prime example, within the city limits of East Tampa, there's some areas there that we can bring in a major retail chain that could hire people would be fantastic. Because number one, you got something that people can get to by either bus, our public transportation, or if they have to take a taxi or walking distance. But then you also, if you can bring those jobs in there and you can hire people that live in that area, you put people to work. And that's important. So I understand the high-tech jobs, the high-tech industries are vitally important to bring into an area, especially when you have University of South Florida and the University of Tampa and HCC here, where we can utilize the students and get that experience. But any of those type of things, jobs of whatever we can bring into this county, we can encourage to come work in Hillsborough County. That's what we need to do.
What can viewers, what can us ordinary citizens do for the betterment of the county and to help our elected officials like yourself to move us forward? I mean, what can we do?
You just stay on top of everything. I mean, we're not the smartest people in the world out there. We don't have all the ideas. There are people that would never run for office that have some brilliant ideas of what we can do. Call us and talk to us. One of the things that I'm doing, and we had one, and we're going to do many more, I have something called a kitchen cabinet. I got that from John F. Kennedy. And what we do is in my district, we have meetings. We've been doing it right. We're going to do them now, look like every quarter. We invite anyone who wants to come and talk to us, not only about what issues you have in your community, but talk to us about what ideas you might think we might be able to go through and do in this county. Because that might be something that resonates with one of us that I can take back to talk to, and I can't talk to them directly, with 6 of us, that we can get things happening in this county. So just give us a call. Something you think about, call us, email us, whatever you think is to do, please do. When I have a town hall meeting, please come.
That's fabulous. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming out, telling people somewhat about your background. We didn't mention your wife, who's been on the city council, Gwen Miller, for how long is she? She just
16
retired.
years. She'll be retiring March 31st is her last day.
March 31st.
16
well,
years.
God bless that, and the two of you for spending so much time and serving us so well. We appreciate your coming, and we wish you the best of luck as you try to bring this county back from some of the worst times we've had.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the support also for public access television. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
coming
having me. I
down
appreciate
here.
it very much.
Appreciate it.
What if a disaster strikes without warning? What if life as you know it has completely turned on its head? What if everything familiar becomes anything but? Before a disaster turns your family's world upside down, it's up to you to be ready. Get a kit, make a plan, be informed today. Learn how at ready.gov.
Good morning, Tampa Bay. If you're going to work this morning, expect heavy trafficking at I-275 near Fletcher.
The trafficking of unwitting and unwilling human beings is in Florida, right in front of our very eyes, and we have to stop it before another day goes by.